we were looking at how to use calculus to find points of local maximum, local minimum. We found sufficient conditions for locating local maximum, local minimum. We had continuity test, we had the first derivative test, second derivative test, and then using these tests we also saw how to find absolute maximum and absolute minimum of functions. So till now calculus has given you methods of finding whether the graph is broken or not, whether the graph has a sharp edge or not, right? Where does the graph of the function start turning, right? If going up, then it starts turning down, or if it's going down, then turning up, that is local maxima, minima, and so on. Next we'll look at another property of functions which calculus helps us to analyze. So for that, let us look at the graph of these two functions. Fx is equal to x square, x bigger than or equal to, actually I should take it as, x bigger than or equal to 0, and then gx, which is 1 minus x square for x between minus 1 and 0. So we are looking at the graph of the function g only on this side, and looking at the graph of f, which is y equal to x square, that's the front parabola. And this is 1 minus x square is the part of the semicircle in the second quadrant. Now if you look at both the graphs, then this graph is a graph of a function which is increasing. This is also a graph of a function which is increasing. So both the functions are increasing, both functions are continuous, both functions are differentiable also. But you can see there is a difference between the graph of f and the graph of g. There is a qualitative difference. You can see that this graph is in some sense bending away from x-axis, and this is bending towards x-axis. Now both are increasing, both are monotonically increasing, both are differentiable functions. So what is this property that differentiates the two? Let us just try to analyze this property. So this is an increasing function, graph of f, but it has a property that if I take any 2 points x1 and x2 and take the points on the graph and take the line joining them, that is a chord joining them, that is a secant, that always stays above the graph of the function, wherever the points x1 and x2 may be in the domain. So if a function is, and look at the function which is of this type, then take any 2 points x1 and x2, wherever you take, and take the line joining them, then that chord is always below the graph of the function. So that is how geometrically you can distinguish between the two graphs. Both are increasing, right? Both are differentiable, but geometrically one has the property that the chord joining any 2 points on the graph lies below the graph of the function, and for the other one it lies above the function. So that is the property we would like to make mathematically precise. So this is the picture of y equal to x square kind of function. For any 2 points, if you take the chord, right? So in words, everything is described. You take any point x1 and x2, take the points x1 f x1, x2 x f, these 2 points on the graph, take the line joining, that stays always above. For any point x, if you look at, this is Lx, this is the value of the function. Similarly for the g, other function, it always remains below. So to make it precise, we have to do nothing except that we have to say that for any 2 points in the domain of the function, look at the equation of the line joining that 2 points. So once you know the 2 points on the graph, you know the equation of the line joining them. Once you know the equation of the line joining them, for any point in between, you know what is the value of at the chord, what is the value at the function on the graph. So let us put the definition. F is a function defined on an interval I to R. We say that the function is concave upwards, or it is also called convex, if for any 2 points x1 and x2 in the domain, and look at a point x in between, look at the value f of x, that is less than or equal to L of x. Right? What is the value of L of x? The value of the line joining the 2 points. So this will be the slope of that line joining the point x1 and x2. At the point right? This is the slope of the line. So this is the value at the point x1, f of x minus, right? So value at x1 is always bigger than or equal to value at, so this is the value at of the line joining the 2 points. So that is less than or equal to fx. And similarly we say it is concave downwards if the inequality is other way around, right? The graph, the function fx is always bigger than or equal to, so that is called concave downwards. Is it clear? Concave downwards? Concave downwards is like cup down, a cup put upside down. Concave up is like cup up. Okay? Geometrically we have already seen these properties. And if these inequalities are strict, instead of bigger than or equal to, you say it is strictly bigger than, then you say the function is strictly concave. You add the word strictly. Otherwise it is just, if it is bigger than or equal to, you say only concave downward or concave up. Right? Geometrically it's clear. And a point C belonging to I, which is an interior point, it should not be one of the endpoints of the interval. We say it is a point of inflection if that is the point where the nature of concavity changes to convexity or convexity changes to concavity. That is a point where if it is coming like this, cup down, then it starts becoming cup up. It changes its nature of convexity to concavity or other way around. That is a graph where inflection is there. Suddenly it takes a twist, right? Instead of being a one type concave up, it becomes concave down or other way around. But that is only for interior points because you have to compare on the left as well as on the right. So that is called a point of inflection. So let me repeat once again, concave down, right? So this is concave downwards means the value of the function is always above the chord joining the 2 points. Is cup, right? Concave down, concave cup down. So the value will always be between. You imagine in a cup there is a spoon lying inside the cup. Imagine a spoon inside the cup. If it is cup up, the spoon always will be above the bottom of the cup. So any point at the bottom, right, will be below the spoon. That is the chord joining the 2 points. Okay, so that is cup up. Other way around, concave down. And the point where it changes nature is the point of inflection. So let us look at one or two examples to illustrate. Let us look at the function fx is equal to x cube, x between minus 1 to 1. So let us look at for x1 and x2 between the interval 0 to 1, take 2 points. Let us look at the value of fx minus fx1. By the formula of the function, it is x cube minus x1 cube. You can use your algebra, factorize it, and then replace this x by x2 because x is less than x2, right? X is less than x2, so this will be less than, replace x by x2, put this value. And what is this value? This is nothing but the value of the function x2 cube minus x1 cube. So basic algebra gives you that f of x is always strictly less than f of x1 plus, right, the other portion. So that is the value of the chord, value at the chord at joining the 2 points x1 and x2 at a point x in between. Okay, so f of x is always, this is the value at x. Okay, so what does it imply? F of x is less than, so it stays below, right? That means it is cup down. Okay, cup up, right? F of x is less than, so that remains. And similarly on the other interval, so this is just the point x is equal to 0 is the point where it changes its nature. If you recall, we had already looked at the graph. It looks like goes like this and then turns, right? On one side it is cup up, on the other side it is cup down. So there is a typical example, and we have just proved it using only definition of the function. We have not used any calculus here at all, right? But if we have some additional properties about the function, then we can say something. So let us look at the first property, that is continuity. Suppose there is a break in the graph of the function. Okay, it goes like this. I think there is something, graph is not fully correct. It should come up to here actually, because at this point, this is a value. At the point C, there is a break. So this should be the point. It graph goes like this, and then there is a jump and it starts going like this. Okay, if this is the graph of the function, do you think it will be convex or concave in this interval A to B? In this portion, can you say it is concave up or concave down? Nothing is possible. You can't deduce anything, because if you take a point here, okay, and if you take a point on the other side and take the chord joining, on one side it will be, chord will be above, on the other side chord will be below. So you can't decide whether the function is concave up or concave down. That means this geometrically intuitive idea tells us that if a function has a discontinuity at a point in an interval, that in that interval it cannot be convex or concave. So what should be the result we should be proving? That continuity is necessary for a function to be convex or concave. Right? If it is not continuous, then it cannot be convex or concave. So if it is convex or concave in an interval, then it must be continuous. So it is a necessary condition. We will not be proving it. The proofs are slightly technical for this concave up and concave down. So we will assume this theorem that if a function defined on an interval is convex or concave, then it must be a continuous function. Right? So if it is not continuous, it cannot be. In that interval, wherever, if the interval has a point of discontinuity inside it, then it cannot be convex or concave. So let us look at one more example to get some ideas about how to analyze convexity and concavity of functions. So let us look at our friend y equal to x square, which is a typical example of a function which is concave up. And what is the property of this function? So if you take a point, say on the left side, and look at the, say take a point here and look at the tangent, this is the tangent. So as you move, right, the tangent becomes more and more flatter, right, and go on the other side, then the tangent goes on becoming like this. Okay, so that means what? Y equal to x square is differentiable. At every point I am able to draw a tangent, but as I move from left to right, the slope of the tangent is increasing. Right? So geometrically it says that if a function is convex up and is differentiable, then we should have the derivative of that function should be a increasing function. And that property is in fact true. But proving that property for functions concave up or concave down is slightly messy. So we'll not do the proof. We'll assume this proof also. So this is called the first derivative test for convexity and concavity. It goes very much similar to increasing, decreasing. So once you see, so it says f is a function, say that f prime exists, then the following holds. F is concave upward if and only if f prime is increasing. The typical behavior of y equal to x square actually is a fact. It is not only for y equal to x square. For any function which is concave up and is differentiable in that interval, then the theorem says it is concave up if and only if, both ways. Right? Like we had a function was increasing if and only if derivative was positive. Something similar is happening here. This is the first part of this. So f is concave upward if and only if f prime is increasing, and similarly you will have concave downward if and only if f prime is decreasing. So this is the first derivative test. If you know something more about the function, if you know the function is differentiable and the derivative, you have a property of the derivative that the derivative is either increasing or decreasing, right? Then the function is concave up or concave down accordingly. But the both are if and only if conditions. Okay? And if you recall, for increasing we also had one-way condition, right? So similarly there is a one-way condition. If f prime is strictly increasing, then only you can say that f is strictly concave. Converse may not be true always. So both the results concave up or down if and only if f prime increasing. But if you want to say strictly increasing, if f prime is strictly increasing, then you can conclude that f is strictly concave up. And similarly, f prime is strictly decreasing, then f is strictly concave. Right? Both these results, keep in mind, are only one way. F prime strictly increasing implies it is concave. These are sufficient conditions only. Strictly increasing implies strictly concave. This is only a sufficient condition, it may not be necessary. So this result we'll assume. This is the first derivative test we are going to assume. So let us apply this to say a function like 3x square minus 9x plus 6. So how would you find whether the function is concave or convex? Because you know the function is differentiable, it is a polynomial function, it is differentiable everywhere. Find the derivative, that is 6x minus 9, and look at the second derivative, right? So the derivative function is strictly increasing function because it is f prime is 6x plus 6x minus 9. That you can say is strictly increasing. So hence the function is, right? Okay, we have not done the second derivative. This part should be a bit later. So there is second derivative test which also you can apply, but we will do it a bit later. Okay. So first derivative says, now something like a second derivative test for local maxima minima, right? What do you want? If you want a function to be convex, right, or concave up, you want f prime to be, what do you want property f prime to be increasing? But when is f prime increasing? If the second derivative exists, you already have a second derivative test by your property of the differentiable functions. So second derivative should be positive, then it is strictly increasing, negative, then it is strictly decreasing. So that gives you second derivative test. So second derivative is bigger than or equal to 0 for all x, then it is concave up if and only if, once again, downward if and only if it is less than or equal to. Just translating the first derivative test, keeping in mind a function is increasing if and only if its derivative is bigger than or equal to 0, using that property. So proof follows from the first derivative test. But here is that one-way result, that if f double prime is strictly bigger than 0, then you know f prime will be strictly increasing, and hence by the first derivative test it will be strictly concave up. So all this follow from the first derivative test and properties of f and f prime, the derivative. So this is what is called the second derivative test. So depending on the function is differentiable or not, you can apply your first derivative test or second derivative test. So first derivative test, second derivative test for convexity and concavity. At the points where the nature changes, these are points of inflection. So we can conclude something about that. So first derivative test for point of inflection, f prime exists in an interval c minus delta to c plus delta for some delta. That means, right, the derivative, the c should be a interior point first of all, and derivative should exist in an interval around the point, in an interval in a neighborhood of the point c. We want it, nature should change, right? It should change its nature from convexity to concavity or concavity to convexity. Then what should be happening? So in the derivative, you can write the derivative test. On the right side, if you want it to be concave up, then that derivative should be increasing, and concave down on the left side, derivative should be decreasing. So you can just write down the test for point of inflection in view of the first derivative test. So if f prime is strictly increasing on the left and strictly decreasing on the right, or vice versa, then that will be a point of inflection. So that is the first derivative test for inflection. And similarly, you can write down the second derivative test in view of the earlier one. F double prime exists in a neighborhood, maybe not at the point C, but the second derivative is strictly bigger than 0 on one side and strictly less than 0 on the other side, or vice versa, right, or other way around. Then it is a point of inflection. So this is the second derivative test. So for second derivative test, you have to just analyze second derivative positive in a interval around that point on the right or on the left, and the other side it should be opposite. Then this is a point of inflection for the point. Yes? Clear till now? Concave up, concave down. Concave up means, right, the chord. Concave up means the chord is below the graph of the function. In terms of derivative, the first derivative should be bigger than or equal to 0, right? And wherever it changes sign, that is a point of inflection. You can write in terms of second derivative test. Second derivative is strictly bigger than 0, then it is a concave up. Strictly less than 0, it is strictly concave down. Okay. So finding, computing points of inflection and regions. So let us look at the function 1 over 1 plus x square. So find the derivative. So that is the derivative of the function. And now you have to analyze the second derivative. That comes out to be this. So simplify. So this is the simplification. Now from here you can find out 1 plus x square, that is always positive. 2 is positive, so only the numerator is going to determine the sign of the second derivative. So find those points. So you can see 3x square equal to minus 1 bigger than 0 or less than 0. So accordingly you will have the region where it is concave up or concave down. So it is concave down in the interval minus 1 over square root 3 2, right? And similarly on the other portion, on the left of minus 1 by 3 or on the right of, the derivative will be positive, second derivative is positive, so it is concave up in that region. So basically find the second derivative if the function has second derivative. If it doesn't have, you can't help it. You have to apply only the first derivative, or if nothing is possible, then you have to apply the definition itself, right? There is no other way out if you have no other knowledge about the function. So these are the points of inflection plus minus 1 square root 3, right? Okay. Let us give some necessary and sufficient conditions for points of inflection, which is supposing C is a point of inflection. Necessary conditions always mean you assume that property is true and that it should imply something. What is a point of inflection? If the second derivative on the left exists and second derivative on the right exists, then it should change sign. Second derivative should change sign. But at that point, we are not saying that the second derivative should exist for the point of inflection. It may not be even a point of continuity for a point of inflection, right? We only want on the left, it should be strictly concave up, it should become strictly concave down, and other way around. Okay? But suppose the function is differentiable, second derivative does exist at the point C. In fact, function is differentiable, then this says, then at that point the second derivative will be equal to 0. So that is a necessary condition for points of inflection. It is something similar to points of local maxima minima. First derivative should be equal to 0. Those are the possible points of local maximum and local minimum. So this theorem is useful in the sense that if you want to locate possible points where the function could have, right, could have points of inflection, then look for the points. If the second derivative exists, put it equal to 0 and solve it. That will give you possible points where the function can have points of inflection. But still you have to test whether it is a point of inflection or not. It is not necessary that if the second derivative is 0, then it will positively have a point of inflection. This is only a necessary condition. We will give you examples soon. And then there is a third derivative test. Third derivative test says, supposing the third derivative exists and is equal to 0, second derivative is 0, but the third derivative is not equal to 0, then it is a point of inflection. Does that give a sufficient condition now? So once you have second equal to 0, you have found those points, right, where second derivative is 0, you want to test whether that is a point of inflection or not, then look for the third derivative if the third derivative exists, right? And it says if the third derivative is not equal to 0, then it is sufficient to ensure that the function has a point of inflection at the point C. And the proofs of these two are very much similar to that increasing decreasing proofs. For example, if the second derivative, let us just see a proof of f double dash equal to 0. Yes, second derivative exists and it is a point of inflection, and then it says second derivative must be equal to. So I want to analyze, I am given a point of inflection, right, and I want to say something about the second derivative at that point. So how should the proof start? You want to analyze the second derivative, so you have to look at the second derivative definition. So what is the second derivative at the point C? It is f prime of C plus h minus f prime at C divided by h, limit of that h going to 0, right? But you are given it is a point of inflection. So already you know, because the first derivative exists, right? So you know that nature of the first derivative on the right of the point and on the left of the point. So supposing the function is concave down on the left and concave up on the right, point of inflection says this is one of the possibilities, right? It should change nature. So f prime either is increasing on the left and decreasing on the right. So use this nature and that will give you what should the second derivative should be equal to. F double prime, which is limit of f prime C plus h minus f prime C divided by h. When h is positive, when h is negative, that gives you two conditions. By depending upon analyzing on the left as well as analyzing on the right, that will give you that f prime should be positive as well as negative. That implies f prime should be equal to 0. The proofs are very much similar to increasing, decreasing, local maxima things. Because you want to analyze second derivative, look at the definition. You have a property of the first derivative because it is a point of inflection. So on the right, if it is increasing on the left, it should be decreasing on the right, the first derivative. Or it should be increasing on the left and decreasing on the right. One of these only possibilities is there. So use that to deduce that f double prime at C, either should be one will give you, if you look at the right hand derivative, right hand second derivative, it should be bigger than 0, other one will give you it should be less than 0, and that will imply second derivative must be equal to 0, and similarly this one. So I would strongly advise that try to prove these things yourself. Proofs are there in the notes, so you can read from there, but try to prove it yourself, because that will tell you how to start thinking about something, right? So if you are given a statement and you want to prove it, how should you start thinking about it? Okay, what should be the starting point? Normally, that is the one difficulty in problem solving. One doesn't know where to start thinking, right? What is the idea I should try to explore, which will give me something. So always it's good to write what is given to you and what you want to analyze. In this thing, you are given a property of the first derivative and you want to analyze the second derivative at the point. To analyze second derivative, what you have to do? Look at the definition and use the property of the first derivative that is given to you. Okay. So remarks, as I was saying, the condition that f double prime is equal to 0 need not imply that the function has a point of inflection at that point. Okay. Can you think of some example? Something like parabola, but something much more. Go something bigger. Good. So x to the power 4, I also thought of the simplest one, that, right? It looks like a parabola, but more flatter. Near 0, it will be more flat actually. Okay. It is a symmetric function. At the point 0, the second derivative is 0, but it doesn't have a point of inflection. So once again, f double prime equal to 0 only gives you possible points where the function can have points of inflection. You have to test it by first derivative test or by definition. And similarly, the third derivative, that sufficiency thing, that the third derivative at a point of inflection, third derivative exists, but it need not imply the third derivative is not equal to 0. We had that third derivative, right, implied that is sufficient, but this is not true. So another example where this is not true, 100, but that will be symmetric. You will have a problem. You will have a problem. You should be non-symmetric. 101. Good. So the simplest is x to the power 5. Okay. You see how quickly you jump 100. Okay. But you forget that symmetry will cause problem there. Okay. Right. So let us finally, using all these things, let us try to do one computational example. So let's look at the function x into 1 minus x. We have already, I think, done it, part of it. So not differentiable at the points 0 and 1 because of the absolute value thing. So if you simplify the function, it looks like x into 1 minus x, and on the other part where the absolute inside the thing is positive or negative. So that is the first derivative in the portion minus 2 to 0 or 1 to 2. So now you can analyze the second derivative, that is equal to 2, right? So what does it imply? Second derivative is 2, which is bigger than or equal to 0 in this, when x is in this portion or this portion. So what does it imply? It implies that the function is concave up in this two intervals? Yes or no? Yes. No, it does not. Why? Because this is minus 2 to 0 and that is 1 to 2. If you put them together, you say that in the union of these two intervals it is concave up, that is false. Because in each interval you have to analyze that condition separately. So it says it is concave up in this interval minus 2 to 0 and also concave up in that interval, not in the union, because if you take a point here and take a point there, then that property that the chord lies always above will not be true, right? So be careful about that. When you are writing, it should be in that interval, not union of intervals. Don't make that mistake. So it is strictly concave up in the intervals this and this, okay? And similarly, you can analyze in the interval, so that is 1 minus 2x, that is, so it's concave down in that interval. So it changes its nature of convexity to concavity at that point 0 and, so there are 2 points where it changes its nature, okay? Those are points of inflection. You can also analyze the point in between where f prime of x is equal to 0, that is x is equal to 1 by 2. You can analyze whether that is a point of local maximum or minima. Second derivative is less than 0, so that is a local maximum. So that is what the graph of the function will look like. Right? So in the interval, in this portion it is concave up, in this portion it is concave up, in this is concave down. And these are the points where the function is changing its nature from convexity to concavity, and from where concavity to convexity, and those are points of inflection, and both are points of non-differentiability. Both are points of non-differentiability. Okay? What could be a physical interpretation of saying that something is a point of inflection? As such, if the function has second derivative, you saw that the second derivative changes its nature, right? At the point of inflection, second derivative positive on this side becomes negative on the other side, or negative on this side becomes positive on the other side of the point. And physical quantities, what does the second... Hello? Would you like to come here in the front? Now come here in the front. Change your seat. Come here in the front and sit here. So when the second derivative changes its nature from positive to negative or negative to positive, in physical quantities, if function says the distance traveled by a body, what does second derivative indicate? Right? And if it's positive and it becomes negative, so body was accelerating up to some point and then it suddenly starts decelerating, or it was decelerating and starts accelerating at the point of inflection. So that is the physical interpretation of points of inflection. Okay? So that represents the acceleration and so on. So there is another, so till now we have looked at various ways of trying to draw a picture of the function. Continuity, differentiability, local maxima, local minima, then looking at global maximum, global minimum, then convexity, concavity. So all these are characteristics of a function which gives you a better view, better understanding of the function. There is another property. Supposing your function is defined, say, in the whole of the real line, and supposing you say the function is increasing. Supposing you say the function is, domain is the whole real line, and the function is increasing, right? Then you would like to know, as you go on increasing, what happens to the graph of the function? Increasing means it will go up. Will it go up and above? It goes on increasing, it goes on becoming higher and higher, or something else happens. Right? So analysis of functions for large values of x, or when the value of the function becomes large, either the point goes to infinity, x goes to plus infinity or minus infinity, or x goes to some point and the value y becomes plus infinity or minus infinity or something else. So such analysis we want to analyze, and such are called asymptotes for functions. So consider the function 1 over x, right? We know that when x is bigger than 0, 1 over x is bigger than 0. Okay? So the function is, what happens to the function as x increases? It is a decreasing function, right? And it always stays above the graph of the function. 1 over x is always bigger than 0. So graph will always stay above the x-axis, and this is monotonically decreasing. So what should happen? We know that 1 over x is becoming smaller and smaller as x positive becomes larger and larger. So it is coming closer and closer to x-axis, right? So such behaviors, so one says, if you look at the second derivative also you can look at. So a strictly increasing and concave up function. So one analyzes that x goes to plus infinity, it goes to 0, and x comes to 0 when x is coming closer to 0, 1 over x is becoming larger and larger, so that becomes plus infinity, right? So such things we would like to make formal. Okay. So this is what the graph of the function looks like. So as you go on increasing, right, it comes closer and closer. It's never equal to 0 because 1 over x is always strictly bigger than 0. And similarly 1 over x, right, it becomes smaller and smaller but never becomes equal to 0. It is never going to meet x-axis, y-axis. Okay. So one writes, makes definitions by keeping this in mind. As x goes to something, y happens to something. So let us write y equal to fx is a function, and we say the line y equal to b. So this is the line y equal to b, like the line x-axis for 1 over x. The function comes closer to that line, but right, but is not meeting that line essentially, right? But one should not say it's not meeting. We want to say that the distance between the line and the function becomes smaller and smaller. It is coming closer and closer. Okay, so that is by saying that x going to infinity. So if you go from right, x goes to minus infinity, the graph of the function looks like this. So that is saying that x goes to minus infinity, fx is equal to b. So you can say this is a horizontal asymptote from the left. As you are moving on the left side, you are going to the left side. So you can say there is a horizontal asymptote on the left, right? So the line y equal to b is called a horizontal asymptote to the graph of the function on the left. So intuitively, the graph of the function is coming, the distance between them is becoming smaller and smaller. So on the left, similarly, you will have something on the right also. So that is y equal to b, right, coming closer. So that is horizontal asymptote on the right side. Now let us look at something called vertical asymptotes. So what is happening, like 1 over x, the y-axis, the graph was coming closer to the y-axis as x was coming closer to 0. So we take any line x is equal to a, and we want to say that the graph of the function is coming closer to this. So what we should say, as x goes to a, the function value of the function should become plus infinity, right? So let us write that. So a going to a minus, because we are approaching a on the left side, okay, approaching a on the left. So you can say it is a vertical asymptote from the left. Similarly, you can define vertical asymptote from the right, okay, to the function. So when you say vertical asymptotes, the value of the function, right, is going to become plus infinity or minus infinity. When you say horizontal asymptotes, you are analyzing, right, your graph of the function, a line y equal to b, a horizontal line, okay, approaching that thing. So let us just a typical example of this thing. So x goes to plus 1, right, x goes to plus on the left or on the right, it doesn't matter from which side it goes, because denominator will become smaller and smaller, positive or negative. So depending on that, it will go to plus infinity or minus infinity. So x is equal to 1 is a vertical asymptote from the left as well as from the right at the point x is equal to 1. And let's look at x goes to infinity, fx minus 1. So that is, if you subtract, that is equal to 0, 1 over x minus 1, that limit x goes to infinity. So that limit, it should be limit here. Okay, fx minus 1 is this value, and limit of that x goes to 1 is, x goes to infinity is 0. So what does it indicate? Similarly, the other one, x goes to minus infinity. So what does it indicate? The vertical line y equal to, right, the line y equal to 1 is a horizontal asymptote, as well as from the left as well as from the right. You can check convexity, concavity if you like for this function. Go to the first derivative, go to the second derivative, right, it is strictly decreasing in these intervals. First derivative, nature of first derivative, positive, negative, gives you function is increasing or decreasing in those intervals. You can look at the second derivative and see whether it is negative or positive. For all x less than 1, it is less than 0, concave down, and concave up in the other portion. So you can analyze if the function is differentiable at these points, right, in some intervals, whether the first derivative increasing or decreasing. Look at the second derivative nature, that will give you convexity or concavity points of inflection. So all this data you can put together and try to draw a graph of the function, right? So this line y, this was a vertical asymptote, this was a horizontal asymptote. Both sides, right? So as you go on, so it come closer to this line x is equal to 1. As you go on, the minus infinity is also coming closer to 1. Similarly, the vertical asymptote. There could be other, not only lines, vertical or horizontal, there could be oblique lines, or even there could be other curves close to which the function can come. So one can define, see what is asymptote. What is the word asymptote means? Eventually, what is happening, right? Eventually, what is happening when something else, right? The one of the variable is coming close to something. So eventually, you can think of your graph of the function coming closer to a line, straight line, which may not be a horizontal or a vertical line, or it could be coming closer to graph of, say, a parabola or something. So one says asymptotically it behaves like, right? But we'll look at only what are called oblique asymptotes coming closer to a line. So we look at fx minus ax plus b, that is a line, and look at the difference of the two. And as x goes to plus infinity or x goes to minus infinity, if this quantity goes to 0, the distance goes to 0, then you will say the line ax plus b is a oblique, right, inclined asymptote to the graph of the function from the left or from the right. So it may look like this, or the other way around, it will look like this. Okay. So as you are coming towards the left, you are going on towards minus infinity, it is coming closer to this line. Okay. So this is asymptote. Ax plus b is called asymptote if this is happening. So normally, how would you try to find a oblique asymptote, if any? Right, you will have to separate it out, right? The part which you think is a line which is going to come closer to it or not. For example, look at x square minus 1 over 2x plus 4. This, the degree of the numerator is bigger than the degree of the denominator, so you can divide and you can write it in this way. Right? Once you write it in this way, what happens? You can see that fx minus this line is equal to 3 by 2x plus 4. So as x goes to infinity, this is going to go to 0. So fx minus a linear part, right, is going to go to 0. So one can write, so that goes, limit is 0. So this is an oblique asymptote for the function for both from the left and right. For this, directly if you look at the function 2x minus 4, you can try to make denominator go to, right, denominator go to infinity. So that means x goes to minus 2 from the left or from the right. So that is a vertical asymptote. So there is a vertical asymptote, there is a oblique asymptote, and one can verify other things, concave up and concave down, by looking at the second derivative test, because the function is a polynomial, a rational function, so it is differentiable in the appropriate intervals. You can analyze derivative to be, so second derivative to be positive or negative, and if you do that, you get 2 is a point of inflection. So one can look at the graph of the function, which looks like this. It's not very well drawn. Actually, it seems like it is going up. It shouldn't be. It should be coming closer to that line. So it's not a very well drawn graph. But essentially, this line is an asymptote, and this line also is a asymptote for the function. And this is like cup up, and this is like cup down. So those are the basic features of the function that you can look at. So normally, as I said just now, whenever you have a rational function, a polynomial divided by another polynomial, and if the degree of the polynomial px is bigger than the degree of the denominator by a linear factor 1, right, the degree is 1 more, then you can always divide and write it in terms of some ax plus b into something, right, then ax plus b will be a. And similarly, if degree is 2 more, then you will get not an oblique asymptote, but you will get a parabola coming closer kind of thing. Those of you who would like to sort of think about more, so that will be coming closer. So, yes? Somebody scored a goal or something? I don't know. Or maybe match is going on, somebody hit a sixer. Okay. It's good to appreciate, but not too much of appreciation. That looks like probably you're not appreciating at all. But too much of everything is bad, right? If you have good food, you enjoy it. But if you have too much of good food, you may get indigestion. So, that is a hint for, okay. So, that is a asymptote. So, let us go over to probably, here is something for you to clap if you want to clap. Okay? Now you don't feel like clapping, is it? Okay. Probably after a few years, these pictures, these animations will stay in your mind. Mathematics may not stay. That's why animations are useful. Okay. So let us go over to something more. Okay, I think that seems good enough because we have some time, so I thought we'll spend it usefully. So this we have already seen. Right. So let us look at all these things which we have done: increasing, decreasing, convexity, concavity, local minima, absolute maxima, absolute minima, points of inflection. They give a fairly good enough picture of asymptotes, fairly good enough picture of what is the function look like. There are some other things which will help you to draw a picture of it. They are called symmetries in the function. You can try to observe whether your function has the property that f of x is equal to f of minus x in the domain of the function. Right? So that this property, one says the function is a even function. F of x is equal to, you change x to minus x, the value of the function does not change, like y equal to x square. Right? So what is the advantage of this kind of observing this kind of symmetry? Namely, you don't have to draw the picture on both sides. If you draw on the one side, then you can reflect it on the other side and you have a picture of the function. So shortening the work. So that is called a even function. Oh, I am in another mode. So now let us look at, so such a function is called, so for example, your standard function y, you have to only draw it on one side to get a picture on the other side. Then there is other property where f of minus x is not equal to f of x, but it is minus of f of x. Such functions are called, they are called symmetric with respect to origin, or the earlier ones are called even. So one says they are odd functions, but there are nothing odd about them, right? Even they are nice. Okay? But how would you draw the graph? What is the advantage of this? Supposing you know on the positive side the graph of the function. What is the graph of the function on the other side? You reflect and then reflect down. Reflect about y-axis and then reflect about x-axis. That gives you the graph of the function. So most of the things probably you already know. So let us, so that is what you draw it on this side. To draw on the other side, first reflect here and then reflect down. Then there are other things to observe called intercepts. Intercepts are the points where the graph is going to cut x-axis or y-axis, right? So when you put f of x is equal to 0, that gives you the points where the graph is going to cut x-axis, right? Those are the x-intercepts. And similarly, so the point x0 will be the point on the line x-axis where the graph is going to pass. And then there will be y-intercept where the graph cuts y-axis. Observe that there could be more than one x-intercepts, but there will be only one y-intercept, right? Because the graph cannot cut y-axis more than once, okay? Otherwise it will not be a function. So that point is there. So all these observations you can keep in mind to, so I will just going through an example. Y equal to 2x cube minus x, intercepts are there, y-intercept you can find. Then you can find what is called periodicity is another observation which helps you to draw the graph of a function. What is meaning of periodicity? That in some interval, if you know the graph of the function, in every interval of that length you know the graph of the function. So that says f is a function of period p if f of x plus p is equal to f of x for every x. That means from any point x, if you go by a distance p distance either side, then the value is same as at the point x. So again the advantage is like your function, trigonometric functions, right? If you know the graph of the function in one interval of length p, then you know the graph everywhere. You have to just cut and paste that graph everywhere else. So that is the periodicity. So like if you know the graph, you can just go on repeating it. So let me just summarize this curve. This is what is called curve sketching, or drawing the picture of a function using calculus. So the observations are: locate for x-intercept or y-intercept, and y-intercept. Locate for the symmetry, whether it is even or odd, if at all. Sometimes it may be symmetric with respect to some other line probably, not y-axis, probably some other line. So that is another possibility. Periodicity, analyze continuity, analyze differentiability of the function, first derivative, second derivative, and so on. That will give you increasing, decreasing, right? Then intervals of increase, decrease, local maxima, critical points, local maxima, local minima, locate points of extremas, locate regions of convexity, concavity by looking at the second derivative. Second derivative, if the second derivative exists, or by first derivative itself, we used to be able to say sometimes. Locate points of inflection, analyze the behavior of the function as x goes to plus infinity or minus infinity, and similarly analyze the behavior when x goes to plus infinity or minus infinity, what happens to f of x, or x goes to a asymptotes. So look at asymptotes, if at all, vertical asymptotes, locate oblique asymptotes, and all this data should go in plotting or drawing or sketching the graph of the function, right? So there are 1 or 2 minutes probably. I'll just quickly, for example, you are given a function y equal to x. Now that's what I said in the beginning, drawing picture of a function. It has big eyes, it has moustache, right? The person has moustache, it looks like squarish mouth and all kind of things. So by various properties, and gives you a picture of that thing. So it's perfectly similar to that. So it's a function. I am not giving you the formula, I am just giving you the characteristics of the function. It is a function f of x is equal to 0 for x is equal to minus 1, minus 2. Right? Even if a formula is given, this is what you are going to deduce from the formula. Okay? These are the various things given. Is twice differentiable with first derivative bigger than 0 in this interval and in this less than 0 in this interval. Right? F at minus 1 is 4, f at plus 1 is 0. And such data is given, and you are given something about the second derivative is less than 0 for x less than 0 and bigger than 0 for x bigger than convexity, concavity nature is given to you. And then something about asymptotes is given. So that means that the function is always goes on increasing and decreasing. And from there we want to deduce the data. So the graph is smooth because the derivative exists. Of course it is continuous, passing through these points. A local maxima, minima, first derivative nature gave you local maxima, minima. And then strictly concave up in that interval, strictly concave down because second derivative nature was given to you. It has no asymptotes, it keeps on decreasing and keeps on. When you move to the left, it keeps on going down and keeps on going up. So all this give you a tentative picture of the function without knowing what is the graph formula as such, right? So probably one can try to guess what should be the formula of this. It looks like cutting, so probably a cubic. Why x cube only? X cube will be like this probably, right? It's not x cube because it has two roots, okay? X cube has only one root. All the three roots are same, okay? So this is what is called curve sketching. So I think let me stop it here today, okay?